Now, join us on the program. Dr. AWR Hawkins joins us from the Daily Caller. Dr. Hawkins, how you doing tonight, sir?
Oh, Cam, I'm doing great.
You have not had to issue any corrections to your latest piece in the Daily Caller that free men actually don't act free or anything like
No,
that, right?
I haven't had to say anything like that yet, no.
All right. Your latest piece really is fantastic. I got to tell you, free men acting free. And you say, when we think about what characterizes free men, what qualities or habits they usually exhibit, there are a handful of traits that seem to show themselves again and again. What traits have you identified, Dr. Hawkins?
Free men are prone to speak their mind. As I say in the article, that doesn't mean they run their mouth. They're men of self-control. They speak their mind. They will stand up for right and wrong, and they will defend what's theirs. And that covers a multitude of things, from their own lives to their families' lives to their real property.
Yeah, and you say free men are inclined to actually own their own things. They actually have property. Chris Matthews was on tonight on Hardball, I guess, attacking the idea of private capital. Said that actually that's 180 degrees from what Barack Obama was planning on running on this summer. I guess Matthews believed that Obama was going to actually actively speak out against the idea of private capital, or perhaps even private ownership of goods. I mean, isn't that the next step there? Communal property for all?
Oh, that's exactly right. The next step is for Chris Matthews to let us have his retirement accounts, because they are not his.
Whoa.
Those funds are everyone's, and so I want my share of the retirement account MSNBC and everyone else has set up for him. And he has no right to claim ownership of that.
Well, I got to tell you, I think you're entitled to some of his airtime, Dr. Hawkins. I mean, you're a bright fella, and I think you're probably more degreed than Chris Matthews is. So I think Chris Matthews should just do the fair thing and give up 15 or 20 minutes a night for you.
No, I do too, but he's not going to. Because the one thing the left understands is to give up anything is to give up power. And it doesn't matter if that's an aspirin, if that's airtime, if that's the dollar in their pocket, it's power.
Yeah. Now, getting back to you, to your column, Free Men Acting Free, you say, whether it's a local burglar breaking into his home to take possessions from his living room or a foreign power attacking his country, a free man knows that freedom isn't free. As Red Atkins sings, I ain't scared to grab my gun and fight for my homeland. I got to ask you, Dr. Hawkins, we live, technically, I suppose all of us would be free peoples here in the United States, and yet, your characterization of free men acting free, clearly not every American is perhaps even aware of their freedom and how blessed they are to live in this country, as opposed to the life that they could be living in, frankly, most other nations on this planet.
Oh, no, you're exactly right, and it's a pity, and I hear it in your voice. You know it is too. The problem is a large majority of Americans, I won't say the majority of Americans, I shouldn't use that word, a large group of Americans have been weaned away from freedom. They've been lured away from freedom by the promise of security. And as Ben Franklin feared that we might do, a large group of Americans have traded liberty for security, which in their mind comes from the government. And so they've lost their free characteristics or their free traits. And so I still celebrate seeing those traits in men when you do see them. And as I know, it seems more often than not when you're around gun owners, you see those traits in so many ways, in so many places. So I'm fortunate to see a lot in my fellow gun owners, as I know you know that even better than me.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. There are so many inspiring individuals out there, and by the way, not all of them are men. There are a lot of free women acting free these days too, and I love to see that. I want to ask you. You saw the story out of North Carolina, I'm sure, of the high school teacher who went off on her class, said that that they could be thrown in jail for speaking disrespectfully about President Obama. Again, and she's a social studies teacher. This was a social studies class. Dr. Hawkins, if we've got educators like this in the classroom who are filling our kids' heads full of nonsense like this, can they learn in school? about their freedom, about their rights, or is this something that in your opinion, has to be taught extracurricularly, perhaps by parents and not in the classroom?
I believe that if your child goes to a public school, a government school, whatever you would want to call it, or if they go to a college, a large college where there's not really any societal influence, that college is its own community. In that situation, your child is going to have to be taught at home. And I say that because I've gone to school in that setting. I've taught at the university in that setting. And I've heard my colleagues describe the original terrorists. The day after 9/11, they described the students, the original terrorists, as being the colonists at Boston Harbor. And so anyone who could twist 9/11 into that, just like this teacher in North Carolina, the only way to defeat that message is to make sure you have taught your children so well that they'll do what the children in that classroom did and fight back. There's no reason not to fight back.
Talking with Dr. AWR Hawkins about his latest piece in the Daily Caller, and you conclude your piece, Dr. Hawkins. You say, quoting George Washington, "A free people ought to be armed." A couple of ellipses in there. You said this was Washington's way of saying guns become us. The man without a gun may look free, but that's only until a criminal with a gun enters his home or his car or his business or da-da-da-da-da. And do you believe, Dr. Hawkins, that free individuals, those who embrace their freedom, do they have a responsibility to be a gun owner, or do they have a responsibility to at least be prepared to defend themselves and those that they love and their property as well?
I do, and I try not to frame it as a responsibility to own a gun per se, because
Right.
I believe you have a choice. If you want to own a bat, that's fine, but I believe you can't argue against it. You have a duty. The right is so great and its author is so great that the right carries with it a duty. And the duty is to defend myself, my own life, the life of my family, and my possessions. Now, if I do that, I can do it with any weapon I wish to use, a bat, whatever, but, a firearm makes a good weapon for that defense, and it allows me to execute my duty.
Well, listen, Dr. Hawkins, as always, sir, I'm glad you could join us on the program. Another great piece of the Daily Caller, and I look forward to having you back again very soon.
Thank you, Cam. God bless.